Hello everyone and welcome to the contextual video for week 4. In this video we will focus on the second phase of the design cycle, which includes the curation of design resources. I also noticed in the last few videos that the first slide was a little blasé, so I've decided to showcase some design work in the first slide as I blabber on a bit. What you can see here is a typography painting done by Si Ming Lee, and this painting can be found on Flickr. It has copyright license of attribution only, free for distribution, and so that's why I've chosen to share it. The questions that we're going to use to guide us in this video are as follows. What is a design artifact? What is the role of curating in the design process? How does creativity influence design? And how do you tap into your own creativity to solve your own design problems? I'm really excited about this week's video because essentially the concept of creativity is one that is generally misunderstood. I want to point out here that everybody who watches this video is creative in some capacity. It's just a matter of finding your inner voice and letting it free. So, the first question to look at is, what is a design artifact? For the purpose of this course, a design artifact can be defined as a composed piece of visual design that has been created to solve a design problem or problems. It represents the final stage of the design cycle and is a piece that is shared with members of the community in order to get feedback. Examples of design artifacts may include, but are not limited to, a photograph, an animation, an illustration, or a multimedia presentation. What each of these artifacts have in common is that they have gone through the entire design cycle, they have been critiqued, they have also been published, and they are now considered complete. It's also important to note that complete is not necessarily finished. What this means is that once an artifact is complete and shared with the community, there may be further revisions that are necessary. This brings us to the next question of, how does creativity influence design? Creativity is a term that has gained traction in the information age, which has also led to the creative culture. However, it's also a term that is overused and consequently escapes easy definition. Sir Ken Robinson defines creativity as the process of having original ideas that have value. He points out that this is indeed a process. It's not an event and it's not a gift that some people are born with. Okay? It's a skill. And this is a skill that is inherent in each individual. When it's supported, it will flourish, and when it is not supported, it will become impaired. It's very similar to a muscle. If it's not worked out, the muscle will become atrophied. Within the context of visual design, creativity is often mistaken for people who can draw, who can paint, or who can take nice pictures. This is not what creativity is, although it's very nice to have some of those skills. Rather, creativity in design involves the ability to approach a design problem with a unique perspective that is both valuable and meaningful to solving the design problem. The design process is a creative process where the designer is required to think about meaningful ways to approach their design issue. In this regard, creativity can be used within the contents of an artifact, the form of an artifact, or the elements of the artifact. There are literally millions of examples of this that can be seen in the world of visual design. I want to focus on one, though, one striking example that may or may not have been particularly obvious to you in your experiences, but helps to demonstrate this point. This example can be found in the movie Schindler's List. If you haven't seen it, I would strongly recommend it. In this film, the director, Steven Spielberg, uses color to accentuate the humanity that can get lost in a film with so much pain and devastation. In particular, he uses the color red in a film that is entirely black and white to identify a little girl who has been separated from her parents early on in the film. Maybe a little bit difficult to see here, but if you look closely in the middle of this image, you can see a little girl wearing a red jacket. Spielberg uses this color red to accentuate the girl in the backdrop of the black and white background. This is another image where the girl is walking in the crowd. Now, what ends up happening later on in the film, in an image that I'm not going to show, after the viewer has been exposed to the continuous demonstration of violence, which may or may not be at the stage where you're beginning to become desensitized to it, the red jacket reappears. However, this time it's in a pile of bodies that are being moved. What ends up happening is that immediately the viewer identifies the color red and recalls the story of the girl and her being taken away from her family. We also deduce that from the fact that the jacket is now amongst a pile of bodies that the girl has died. And this becomes a very personal and powerful representation of how color can accentuate a message about the importance of remembering both the individual and collective pain of that moment in history. It's a very simple use of color, but also a very powerful one. Now, this is a powerful example that combines two elements of design, two principles of design, which are color and contrast. The next question that leads from this or follows from this is, how can you tap into your own creativity to help you design your own, solve your own design problems? You may be thinking that, Spielberg is this award-winning, multi-million-dollar director, and he does this for a living. However, like design, creativity is often perceived as being something that's only available to those who are artistic. And like design, this belief is both limiting and self-fulfilling. The challenge of tapping into our own creativity is overcoming the belief that we are not creative. This is a belief that has grown throughout our lives, as being reinforced every time somebody told us we were wrong, or that there was only one solution to a problem. Now, as you can see in the equation that I've put up here, this can be true when it comes to math, because 1 plus 1 is always 11. Or it can be a window. Now, there's a variety of ways of looking at this. So how do we overcome our barriers to creativity? The first one is that we need to let go of our fear of making mistakes and understand that design, art, learning, and most things in life are trial and error, and mostly error. In this class, I'm going to ask you to not be afraid to make mistakes. Now, there are many resources that can help you in overcoming any creative blocks that you might have, but I want to share this quote by Steve Jobs because it helps to provide a context for what we're thinking about in terms of creativity. He says that if you want to live your life in a creative way as an artist, you have to not look back too much. You have to be willing to take whatever you've done and whoever you are and throw them away. And so that's what I'm going to ask you to do in your work. If you think that you're not an artist, throw that idea away. If you think that you don't have any understanding of color or balance or symmetry, throw that idea away and gain some understanding and knowledge, and try to apply it within the context of your design problems. It's my hope that you can draw some inspiration from the words of Steve Jobs, as well as find other sources of inspiration for your own levels of creativity. Following from this, you should now be involved in the process of curating resources to help you with your design projects. This process is extensive and will be different for each person. Some questions that you can keep in mind that can help you with this process are, how can you find and utilize pre-existing resources to help you in your workflow? As noted, there are resources available to you in the Edmodo community. However, your search will take you well beyond these resources, and you are encouraged to determine a way that will help you to find viable resources that are appropriate for what you are working on. The next question is, what resources do you have that you can use to inspire you, to keep you organized, and to help you to learn things when you don't know them? A key aspect of this class is that you are autonomous, which means in many cases you're going to be working alone, and you're going to have to find ways to inspire yourself, keep yourself organized, and teach yourself things when you're not familiar with them. Identifying what resources can help you with these different things is an important step in this process. The third point is to think about the feasibility of your action plan. I know what you might be thinking. What does my action plan have to do with creativity? But the important point here is, although you may be very creative at this stage of your process, you have to think about whether or not what you are trying to do can actually be achieved. We all want to create the next 3-hour masterpiece. However, do you have time to do that within the context of this course? When looking at this, you should be able to visualize how and when you're going to be doing the things that you're going to be doing, and what's your timeline for the completion of your artifacts for the class. Although you have guidelines within the context of the course to help you with this, ultimately the timeline is dependent on your own plan of action, and consequently, you should give careful consideration when looking at your schedule. The fourth question that I want to bring up also relates to your plan of action and identifies how are you going to manage your workflow for creating, editing, and sharing your work. This is perhaps one of the most underestimated aspects of doing complex work, and usually only becomes something that is a focus after it has become a problem. You're encouraged to think creatively about ways to manage your workflow. Figure it out for yourself. This can include something as simple as setting up a file structure where you'll be able to find all of your materials, or setting up your computer so that materials, assets, and other resources are easily accessible when you need them. As we enter the creation stage of the design cycle, you're going to need to have answers to these questions. Now, if you have any questions regarding the video, please feel free, as usual, to email me at the email on the screen, or, better yet, post your question to the Edmodo community, or bring it up in tutorial with your facilitators.
Thanks for watching the Week 4 Context.